Hey, how's it going everyone? I hope you guys are all having an amazing day. This video we are going to be going over and comparing nearly every scope that you can put on the DMR in Warzone. Hopefully this will help us draw a conclusion as to which of these scopes is the best scope. Do me a favor, and if this video helps you out at all, then help me out by hitting that like button. But let's go ahead and cut this plug and get right into it. So this is not going to be the most scientific process because the way that I decided to do this was playing 8 different games of plunder, and in each one I used a different scope. In the hopes of testing each of these scopes out on similar playing fields, I also landed in the same spot in each game of plunder, and the way I'm going to break this down is by comparing each of the scope's performance as well as talking about my opinion on how the scope felt during each game. This is going to be mostly opinion based, so be sure to let me know your guys' opinions down in the comments. But let's go ahead and start off with the first scope that we are going to be talking about, which is the VisionTech 2X scope. And this is a scope that I use a lot in Cold War and has been one that I have been using so far in Warzone, so I am a little bit biased towards this scope. I like the versatility that it provides by allowing for both close and medium and semi-long range engagements. That being said though, I feel that this scope is lacking a little bit in the longer range department, which as of now, the DMR can really shine at. We ended up finishing this game with 13 kills, and in nearly every game, this was round about the amount of kills we would end up with, so the scopes weren't necessarily affecting the performance too drastically, other than a few examples. And it really just comes down to which of these scopes you are most comfortable with, as well as what situations you are planning on using the DMR in. For example, the next scope that we are going to go over is the Cobra Red Dot, which has a 1.75 magnification, which is nearly as much as the 2x magnification, but this scope is much more useful in close range combat, as well as still being able to nab you some of those distant kills. Though it is a bit harder to find the targets that are at range with this scope. Maybe I'm getting a little bit too old and my eyesight is fading, but the 2x or more scopes really help me find and track the targets that are at distance. You can see here that I can't see this guy in the window, though I managed to actually land a shot on him with the DMR, but it wasn't until I pulled out the sniper with the 3x scope that I was able to get him. And even then I wasn't even necessarily able to 100% see this guy. We ended this game with 12 kills, and in my opinion, I do not like this scope for the DMR. I think that it totally undercuts the DMR's viability at range, but this is certainly a scope that I would use on a close range SMG. The third scope we are going over is the Axial Arms 3x optic, and this is the optic that I like to put on my snipers, so I was definitely curious to see how it would hold up on the DMR. And right away with the first kill, I noticed that there did not seem to be any apparent extra vertical recoil, which is something that I was worried about. I was also worried about how the extra zoom would affect close range combat, and surprisingly the zoom was not too much zoom to handle. I am sure that situationally that this might be a little too much zoom, but I think that it could definitely be something that you can learn to control, which could be really good for the DMR. A 3x scope on the DMR for medium to far range engagements, and then a SMG or something for close range engagements may actually be the way to go. We ended this game with 13 kills as well, and we spent the second half of the game over at the storage units getting into some closer range combat just to test out the 3x variable up close, and overall this scope in my opinion is a great choice for the DMR. The next scope that we are going to go over is the Microscopic Reflex, which has a 1.37x zoom and, just in my opinion, really chokeholds the DMR. All of the close range optics take away from the DMR's bread and butter, which is the medium to long range engagements. So though I don't really have anything bad to say about this optic's performance, I just can't come out and say that I would recommend putting this on the DMR. We ended this game with only 7 kills and really had an awful time doing so, mainly because I was having a hard time getting close to teams before dying, but once we got over to the storage units and near the superstore, it picked up a bit. But again, the low zoom optics on the DMR are just really holding it back in my opinion. The next scope we are going to go over is the Royal and Cross 4x optic, and this one I was excited to give a shot mainly because I like the 3x zoom on my snipers and had a good time with the 3x zoom on the DMR, so I was interested in seeing what the extra range would do. And well, our first kill ended up being with the Mac 10. For me, the 4x zoom is just way too much to handle reliably at close range, so I kind of panicked and whipped out the Mac 10 for the first kill, and we actually only ended this game with 5 kills, which was mainly due to the fact that we could not find that many people, and every time we did, it was in a building, which is where the 4x zoom ended up getting me killed. I personally ended up not being a huge fan of the 4x zoom on the DMR, but I might be putting this scope onto my snipers because I really like the difference between the 3x and the 4x zoom. Next, we are going to go over the Quick Dot LED, which has a 1.25 zoom, and again, it just falls under the category of chokeholding the DMR's ability. This was a painful game where I only ended up with 8 kills, 4 of which were snipes, and I had to move into the storage area just to get into some close range combat fights, and even then, it felt like the Quick Dot was holding me back in the medium range fights. Let me know down in the comments if this is an optic that you guys are using on the DMR, and let me know why, because I personally just cannot recommend that anyone be running this optic on their DMR. Second to last, we have the Hawksmoor, which has the same zoom as the Microscopic Reflex at 1.37, except the targeting window for the Hawksmoor is much bigger. Surprising to me, the bigger viewing window actually helped me out a lot in this game, which might make me start using this scope on my close range weapons. This zoom again just puts the DMR into a corner really by limiting its range effectiveness, which is why I wouldn't personally recommend using it. But we did end this game with 11 kills, which seemed to be right around the average for this play session. Finally, the last scope that we are going to be going over is the Susat multi-zoom. I have to be honest when I say that this scope is the one that I was most interested in testing out because it may open up the DMR to excel both at medium and long range combat. And I gotta tell you, I was not disappointed, and everything felt really good about this optic other than the weird zoom effect that they add to the center of the optic. This effect confuses me hardcore when I'm trying to track someone out of the air, for example. I noticed especially with my snipers that it was hard for me to lead a target with that center zoom effect. This doesn't apply much to the DMR though, because most of the time you will be taking shots on target, and I can really only think of a few handful of situations where you might need to lead a shot with your DMR. We ended this game with 11 kills, but I felt really comfortable in all of the gunfights that we had, and I really think that the Susat multi-zoom is a great scope to use with this DMR. I am going to be putting it on my DMR for a while to test out a little bit more in depth. One last complaint that I have with the Susat multi-zoom is that the reticle is not changeable. I really do prefer the big red cross in the middle reticle that I was using on all of the other scopes. But let me know down in the comments which of these scopes you guys like the best and which ones you are using and why. But other than that, I hope you guys all have an amazing day. I'm out.